I wish I was there with you in California. I'd rather be there than anywhere else. I'm calling in from Denver right now, doing this recording from Denver. This background here is from the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. I'm Northern Cheyenne. My name's Sheldon Spotted Elk. Pive Shif, and that means good day. It's a beautiful day, is what it really means. But in the response to that, if I was there in person, I'd do a call back and make you do this. The response is you put your thumb to your heart, you do a sideways karate chop, and you say piva. So I say piva ishif, and your response is piva. So hey, it's good to be with you guys. I'm going to talk to you about ICWA Courts. There's a lot of things that have happened recently with ICWA Courts, and it's exciting time. I know somebody's probably going to be doing an update on Brackeen. I work with Casey Family Programs. We're trying to develop some strategies around Brackeen. In response to Brackeen, we have developed strategies around that. And including ICWA Courts. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work here and some of the work that is going to transcend no matter what the Supreme Court says. We're going to be here. Indigenous people have always been here, and we're not going anywhere. We're going to be everywhere. We're still going to be here. And so I find comfort and solace in that. And I find comfort and solace in some of the work that is happening with the ICWA Courts. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about at the very end some of that work. But first of all, I'm going to share a screen and do a couple of slides, only 4 slides. I promise you it's going to be short and sweet. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you guys that ICWA is the gold standard of child welfare. And it has been called that on numerous occasions. This is the reason why, and I have to tell you this because it sets the context for everything, is that, of course, we all know, especially maybe the pandemic taught me this more than anything that's recently taught me this, is that we need connection. We need community. We need these concentric circles around us to protect us. You know, when life gets tough and the winds and the storms of life come, we call family. You know, we worship, we find comfort in our friends and our relatives, you know, so that's really vitally important. We want that for all children. And the reason that ICWA is the gold standard is that it memorializes this in law. And so we fight with active efforts, more than reasonable efforts. We fight with active efforts to keep children safely with their families. That's not possible. We look to relatives and kin to keep them connected to their identity and culture. And all this happens within a cultural and a community affirming environment. We all need that. Every child needs that. Every adult needs that. So that is why it's the gold standard. There's some values that are in that. I got the opportunity in my next slide I want to tell you about. I got this opportunity one time to hang out with Bert Hirsch. He's the guy on the right. That's Jack Trope in the middle. So I was hanging out with these guys. These are ICWA legends, so to speak, you know. So Bert Hirsch is one of the 3 lawyers that put pen to paper and wrote ICWA. The other 2 lawyers are both Indigenous lawyers, Frank Ducheneau, Cheyenne River Sioux, and Alan Parker, who's Chippewa Cree. And so those are the 3 primary lawyers that drafted this bill. And I really like, so even though I'm saying like venerated language around this bill, I like what Bert said. This is the guy that put pen to paper on this law. And he says, after all, ICWA is just bleeping words on a paper. It takes working together for it to reach its highest aspirations. So for you and I to collaborate, for you and I to understand each other, for you and I to build trust, that is the magic behind ICWA. It's not the black words on paper. It's not any of those words that make ICWA magic and make it gold standard. It's actually the collaboration and the opportunity for us to build bridges. And that fundamentally is what ICWA Courts are about. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that here just in a second. But the second thing that Bert told me in that dinner that, well, started as a lunch, and we were just hanging out so long that it turned into a dinner, is that the second thing he told me is that ICWA is a reparative law. It's the only child welfare law that's reparative in nature. If you look at the congressional findings of it, you'll see why. It was aimed to repair, it was aimed to heal. So I think of yourself and how do you show up as a healer? I know in my tribe, I'm Northern Cheyenne, we have this whole history, and you could look at we have this whole history of, of being warriors. Our societies are actually kind of trained to make us warriors, but ultimately we're supposed to be healers at the end. You know, we're supposed to be healers. And so how do we show up like that? How do you show up like that? Is my question, for something for you to think about. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that's happening throughout the country. We do have a website. And so we have if you Google ICWA Courts, we fought really hard to make sure that our website would be the #1 thing that came up. NCJ FCJ is the technical assistance provider for ICWA Courts. And so you'll see their website. And there's now 20 ICWA Courts out there. Can you believe that? If I was there in person, I'd make you applaud, clap, because there's 20 ICWA Courts throughout the country now. We started off with 2 ICWA Courts. I remember when there was 2 ICWA Courts, and so now we have 20. It's, to me, I don't believe it. I feel like I'm lying. But we have 20 ICWA Courts. I'm not lying. And so adjudicating, and this is self-reported, adjudicating about 3,000 Indian children. Some of the things that are in common, they have high levels of tribal ICWA collaboration. So working with tribes that appear most in their jurisdictions, they're partnering with them on a high level. There is a practice of cultural humility. So there's steering committees or stakeholder groups that meet and really cultivate a practice of cultural humility and anti-racism. And ultimately addressing, and I have the data wrong on this, but ultimately addressing the 2.7 now American Indian disproportionality from the 2020 AFCARs. And so we're working really hard to attempt to reduce that. We do have some data studies out there that show some good outcomes, that ICWA Courts are a positive correlation to that. Some of the data that we have, and this is coming out, there's the baseline measure study. And if you're interested in any of these data reports, send me an email, find me on social media, whatever you need to do. And I'll send you this ASAP. But some of the data that we have is that the most significant data, the magic of ICWA Courts, is that when you get a tribe involved earlier in the case, you get better outcomes. Actually, the data that we have, 119 days better outcomes. You get 900 days reduction of children in foster care if the tribe is at shelter hearing is the exact data point on that. Pima ICWA Court, they found that there's an increase in placement preferences, increased tribal participation, parent participation. And so we see these things almost immediately. Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, ICWA Court, no termination of parental rights since their ICWA Court has started. They're higher tribal placement, higher placement preferences. In Denver, we're seeing higher rates of placement preferences. Duluth, Minnesota, we're seeing diversion. Actually, they've gone upstream in some ways, and they're now doing pre-petition work with tribes as far as diverting those cases of what they call the family transfer process. And so we're trying to get that information out there. But their partnerships are with the tribes so much that they're talking even before a petition is even filed. So that means they're not responding to a notice. And I know a lot of jurisdictions struggle just with the notice aspect of it. But thinking about going upstream and partnering with tribes earlier than that is a powerful thing and something that has really moved the dial in a lot of jurisdictions. The last thing I want to talk to you about, so we've done some work just most recently, and this year has been busy. And so we've been all over the country. But most recently, I went up to Billings, Montana, and I'm Northern Cheyenne. So this is the ICWA Court that's closest to my tribal jurisdiction. It's right there. If you could see my mouse, that's where Billings, Montana is at. And so, but we went up there recently and we looked at, I learned about all their innovation. If you want to learn more about it, there's actually a podcast called Gavel Talk. You can find it on your podcast listening, whatever you listen to, whatever choice you listen to. It's season 3, episode 20. Like I said, if you're like, I can't find that, I'm not going to look for it, just reach out to me. I'll send it to your way as soon as possible. But I was up in Billings, Montana recently. You could see the leaves have turned. It was just last week, in fact. But I was so blown away by some of their data outcomes that I need to share them with you because I feel like this is what shows what's possible. Because they developed a treatment court model that overlaps with their ICWA court. Amazing. And so no judges sit on this is Judge Souza that I'm taking a shameless selfie with. He does not sit on a bench. He sits with everybody else on the tables. Everybody shows up at the table with solution-oriented mindset. I really love my good friend, Brooke Bracker Taylor, who's the assistant AG. She refuses the title of prosecutor. I'd embarrass her if she was on this right now. Instead, she wants to be called a courtroom leader. She wants to be like, maybe that's a little elementary school stuff, but she wants to be a courtroom leader. She wants to be somebody that helps, is a helper, and is in that solution-oriented mindset. It shows up with a culture of humility. There's a collaborative representation model. The lawyers are talking before the hearings. There's a lot of out-of-court advocacy. That's one of the aspects of getting better outcomes. What do you do in out-of-court for your client? When you walk into their court, you'll see tribal flags. And so those are the tribes that appear most in their jurisdiction. You'll see them. But some of the data outcomes that they just recently reported on, and I put this side by side. So the yellow is the ICWA court. So we have 82% reunification in their ICWA court versus generally Montana cases. Every case is a 63% ICWA court in general court for reunification. As far as permanency outcomes with guardianships or relatives, 14% in ICWA court, 11% with general population, and then as far as termination of parental rights and adoption, 4% TPR in state courts, 21%. And so there's some significant outcomes when you put ICWA court in Montana versus general practice. And I feel like that's what's possible. That's ultimately what we're trying to do with ICWA courts. A lot of places are trying to do with ICWA courts is ultimately show up with humanity, compassion. And I know when we put compassion and passion together, we become magic. And so when we show up with those attitudes and with those ethos, we become a change agent. We become somebody that can shift the dial. And so I hope all you guys enjoy your dinner, and I hope you guys have a good time. I'll leave you with this. I share it sometimes, or maybe I didn't share it with you. So please forgive me if you've heard this. But in Cheyenne, I only speak a little bit of it. Unfortunately, my dad fluent, and I didn't get to learn very much except swear words. So I'm not teaching you swear words, I promise you. But in Cheyenne, there's a saying, a proverb, a wise saying that goes, I'll say it in Cheyenne first. And what that means is that when the struggles come of life, we all have them. Those aren't what are going to define us. It's how we approach those struggles. And so it's the passion and the courage that we have to approach the disproportionality in our communities, to approach some of these issues that we see right now, to approach Brad King. So that's ultimately what's going to define us. Our grandkids are going to define us by that. They're going to ask, what were you doing when there was this disproportionality? They're going to ask you, what were you doing when this injustice was happening? And I feel like that's important for us to be able to look them straight in the eye and say, hey, it was on the side of justice, and not just us in this room eating this fine dinner, but for all of humanity. I showed up for justice for all of humanity. And so enjoy your meal. If you want to learn more about ICWA courts, like I said, we have a website on the NCJ FCJ's website. Google it. Or if you want to reach out to me and want to know more about some of the things I brought up, please do that. Like I said, wish I was there with you. Please enjoy your meal, and we'll catch you at the next dinner. I hope so.